In this lecture, we're going to look at the role that immigration played in shaping the food industry at the beginning of the 20th century. Long ago, having run out of alternatives, a worried couple sends their young son alone to America. Their land is in turmoil. The people struggle to survive. Collapse is imminent. After his long journey, the boy is welcomed in America, where he is raised by adoptive parents and would eventually, quote-unquote, live the American dream. To do so, however, he changes his name to sound more American and changes his appearance to blend in. Ultimately, he embraces elements of his birth culture to stand out as a man with special talents. He is championed as a hero, even a symbol of America, although he is actually an immigrant. This brief story could be the summary of the lives of many immigrants. It is, however, the story of Superman. Yes, the basic origins of Clark Kent and his secret identity can and have long been viewed as a stereotype of immigrants' narratives. Think about it. The similarities are no coincidence. Most superheroes were created by sons of immigrants. Many superhero origins connect to either the story of immigrants or to their cultures. Even the Hulk was simply a Cold War-era spin on Gollum from Jewish folklore. A significant note here is that these superhero stories reflect experiences of immigrants from Europe. They differ greatly from the experiences of immigrants from Asian and other non-European countries. When we think of the immigration to America that took place about 100 years ago, we tend to recall images and stories of European immigrants, Ellis Island, and people seeing the Statue of Liberty as they arrived on ships. These immigrants filled into the urban areas and industrial jobs of the East Coast. We must also consider that immigrants made up a large percentage of the agriculture and canning labor force on the West Coast as well. These immigrants, however, were mostly from China, Japan, the Philippines, Mexico, and India. The United States saw extremely high rates of immigration from all countries of origin during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Much data exists pertaining to the growth of Asian immigrant labor in the agricultural and seafood canning industries along the West Coast from California all the way up to Alaska. Such an increase in immigration and labor force, especially of people from non-European nations, sparked prejudice and nativist sentiment at the time. This, in turn, fueled restrictive legislation, particularly towards immigrants from Asia. Chinese immigrants made a huge impact in the California Gold Rush and the Transcontinental Railroad. Similarly, these laborers brought about major advances in the growth of agriculture in the West. As a result of the economic pressure and the anti-Chinese animosity from the Labor Party, Congress passed the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, creating a 10-year moratorium on Chinese labor immigration. When the Chinese Exclusion Act expired in 1892, Congress passed the Geary Act, extending the moratorium for another 10 years until it was made permanent from 1902 until the 1920s. Like Chinese immigrants, people who immigrated from Japan also made a large impact in agriculture. Japanese immigrants are also notable for their impact on West Coast fishing and in the canning industry. These immigrants and their children, born as American citizens, faced prejudice due to cultural differences and the fact that they would often work for less salary than non-immigrants, thus impacting the agricultural job market. As a result, legislators negotiated an unofficial U.S.-Japanese agreement in 1907 and 1908 to slow or stop the flow of immigrants from Japan. Early 20th century prejudice gave way to fear and hysteria
after the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. With America's entry into World War II, came Executive Order 9066, calling for the incarceration of West Coast Japanese Americans without a trial or even any evidence of wrongdoing. After the American conquest of the Philippines in 1902, the U.S. granted Filipinos national status. Filipinos migrated to the United States mainly in response to the need for agricultural workers following the exclusion of the Chinese and Japanese. The Mexican Revolution forced many Mexicans northward, but the discrimination they encountered in California resulted in limited job areas as day laborers, farm workers, and maids. Mexican immigrants dominated California's agricultural labor force after 1900. During the Great Depression, resentment of quote-unquote foreign workers increased rapidly, and Mexican Americans were accused of stealing jobs from quote-unquote real Americans. In February of 1931 alone, over 6,000 Mexican Americans were deported. Also during this period, at the beginning of the century, small amounts of immigrants from India also came to America as farmers. After 1917, however, pressured by agricultural labor interest groups, Congress barred immigration from India.
So, what roles did immigration play in shaping the food industry at the turn of the century? Obviously, with more people, the demand for food increased. New markets opened, and immigrants meant an influx of laborers as well as new ideas and techniques. America was no longer one society, however. Immigration and how we reacted to the immigrants divided the nation, divided the labor force, and even divided the food industry. We can see the repetition in our agricultural history with one group of immigrant laborers being pushed or pulled out only to be replaced by immigrants from another country. California's food industry depended on immigrants as migratory farm labor, but they excluded them from union protection due to their race. These exploited people suffered from poor working conditions and extremely low wages. This migratory farm labor of the early 20th century has often been referred to as California's peculiar institution, as the system resembled that of slavery. Immigrant settlement helped to distinguish the American geography between urban and rural areas. Some argue that immigration was part of how people gained the label of being either a consumer or a producer in our food economy. Finally, immigration can be seen as a driving force in differentiating the two coasts, with the East Coast being more industrial while the West Coast became more agricultural. Today, California is still the dominant agricultural state as a result of the labor of Asian immigrants. Throughout the last century, most immigrants did not wear superhero capes or even live the American dream. But their efforts and their ideas impacted many economic and social aspects of the food industry from farm to fork.